Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining me today because we are taking a fascinating journey into one of the most profound, inescapable mysteries of human existence: time. Today, using the incredible research presented in Alan Burdick's captivating book, Why Time Flies, we're going to explore the astonishing ways that time is actually measured. And I don't just mean out in the world with ultra-precise atomic clocks, but deep down within the biological machinery of our own cells. Get ready because by the end of this explainer, you are absolutely going to look at your wristwatch and yourself in a completely different way. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever had that super eerie experience where you wake up in the pitch dark, the room is completely silent, your alarm hasn't even gone off yet, but somehow you just know exactly what time it is? You guess it's 4:27 a.m., you roll over, check your bedside clock, and boom, it is exactly 4:27 a.m. It feels like you have a machine ticking away inside of you, or maybe you're a ghost trapped inside that machine. This phenomenon is totally universal, and it completely shatters the illusion that time is just something that exists out there in the world, on our screens and watches. What you're experiencing in that weird little moment is called temporal orientation. It's this incredible adult ability to place ourselves in time without needing to consult a physical clock. See, whether we realize it or not, we are constantly orienting ourselves using these subconscious clues. It could be the sound of a radiator kicking on, the lack of traffic outside, or even just our body's internal sense of elapsed time. It really proves that time isn't just an external constraint we fight against. Time is actually inside us. But to understand our internal time, we first have to understand where external time actually comes from. Section 1. The world's master clock. To figure out how we physically measure true time in the modern world, you don't look up at the sun anymore. You actually travel to Sèvres, just outside Paris, to the Bureau International des Poids et Mesures, or the BIPM. This is literally the global headquarters of measurement. Right here, a dedicated team of scientists oversees Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC. Whether you're checking a smartphone in Tokyo, a laptop in New York, or a GPS satellite up in orbit, every single timepiece on Earth is ultimately synchronized back to the time maintained by this organization. They are the absolute authority on what time it is right now. But here is the truly shocking part about how world time is actually made. It is not generated by one single, super accurate atomic clock hidden in some Parisian vault. It's actually made by a committee. The BIPM gathers data from around 400 highly precise atomic clocks maintained by dozens of nations all across the globe. All of these clocks are ticking off nanoseconds, but they constantly disagree with each other by tiny, tiny fractions. So the BIPM gathers all this messy data, runs it through a complex algorithm, applies human expertise to filter out the noise, and eventually publishes a finalized average. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is a point made by Dr. Elisa Felicitas Arias, the former director of the time department at the BIPM. She notes that, of course, there is no single physical clock providing exact UTC. You only have local realizations of it. It's an average. And because it takes days to collect and process all this global data, the official UTC is only published once a month in a paper newsletter called Circular T. Just think about that for a second. Perfectly synchronized time doesn't even exist in the present. It only exists in the past, printed on a sheet of paper that tells national labs how far off their clocks were last month. Section 2. Trapped in the dark. So external time requires this vast committee of atomic clocks and human oversight to maintain. But what happens to us when we get cut off from all that external coordination? What happens when we are trapped in the dark? Well, in 1962, a 23-year-old French geologist named Michel Siffre decided to find out. He descended into the Scarasson Glacier, a subterranean cave in southern France, to live like an animal in total darkness. He had no watch, no clock, no sunlight, and no contact with the outside world regarding the date or time. He just pitched a tent in the freezing, wet cavern and lived entirely by his own internal rhythms for months, eating and sleeping only when his body naturally told him to. The psychological distortion he experienced was absolutely staggering. When Siffre's surface team finally called down to tell him the experiment was over, Siffre checked his meticulous personal calendar. By his count, based on his own sleep and wake cycles, only 35 days had passed. But in reality, up on the surface, 60 days had elapsed. Time had completely flown by without him even realizing it. But while his conscious mind lost track of time, his biology definitely did not. Siffre had unwittingly become a pioneer in the study of the circadian rhythm. Without the sun to guide him, Siffre's body naturally settled into a persistent cycle of about 24 hours and 30 minutes. Because his internal clock was just slightly longer than a real Earth day, he drifted further and further out of sync with the surface world. But the incredible takeaway was undeniable. Humans have a deeply built-in biological clock running all on its own. Section 3, trillions of ticking cells. Let's peel back the layers and look at the biology of this internal timekeeper. You might think of your circadian rhythm purely as your sleep-wake cycle, but it is so much more than that. This internal clock dictates when basically everything in your body happens. Check this out. Your threshold for pain is actually highest in the early morning, making it the best time for a trip to the dentist. Unfortunately, blood pressure spikes late in the morning, which is when heart attacks are most common. Your liver metabolizes alcohol much slower overnight than during the day. And between midnight and 4 a.m., your skin cells are rapidly dividing. Time literally dictates the physical operations of your body, minute by minute. So, who is in charge of all this? The boss is a tiny, dual cluster of about 20,000 specialized neurons nestled deep in the hypothalamus of your brain. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. But here's the wild part. Virtually every single cell in your body, in your heart, your liver, lungs, and skin, has its own independent circadian clock ticking away inside it. We are talking about trillions of cells. The SCN basically acts as the master conductor of this massive biological orchestra. It sends out chemical and neural signals to ensure that the trillions of independent cellular clocks in your organs stay perfectly in sync with one another. And this brilliantly illustrates the most profound parallel in the science of time. Just as external time relies on the BIPM gathering data from atomic clocks around the world to create a consensus time, our internal time relies on the SCN gathering and distributing signals to trillions of cellular clocks to create a biological consensus time. Both internal and external time are not singular things. They are grand, coordinated achievements reached by committees working together in perfect harmony. Section 4, the origins of inner time. Now, if we are walking, talking orchestras of time, where exactly do we inherit this internal clock? And how does it know to match the spinning of the Earth? Well, a human being actually acquires time in stages. Long before you were born, while you were just floating in the dark of the womb, your mother acts as your first clock. Through hormones like melatonin passed through the placenta, she keeps your developing organs synchronized to the outside day. But at birth, you lose that maternal connection, and your newborn SCN isn't quite mature enough to disseminate time perfectly yet, resulting in the sleepless, chaotic circadian nightmare every new parent knows all too well. But eventually, the newborn's brain finishes connecting, and they achieve entrainment, locking onto the solar day. Let's move to and see how this builds. To keep our internal committees synchronized with the 24-hour rotation of the Earth, we rely on what chronobiologists call a Zeitgeber. It's a German term meaning time giver. And the ultimate Zeitgeber is daylight. Every single morning, when sunlight hits specialized receptors in the back of your eyes, a signal rushes directly to your SCN, hitting the reset button on your master clock, which then resets the trillions of cells in your body. The sun reaches right into your brain and synchronizes your internal committee to the universe. But to find the true origin of this biological clock, we have to zoom way, way back in evolutionary history. Look past humans, past mammals, past plants, all the way back to a scummy pond filled with cyanobacteria. These single-celled organisms have been around for up to 3.8 billion years, and incredibly, they also have a highly accurate circadian clock. Yes, even before organisms had brains or complex organs, they mastered the measurement of time. Why would a single cell need a clock? Well, cyanobacteria needed to perform two conflicting tasks: creating energy through photosynthesis and fixing nitrogen. Oxygen produced in photosynthesis actually destroys the nitrogen-fixing process, so they used a simple protein clock to separate the chores across time: photosynthesis by day, nitrogen-fixing by night. Scientists also believe these ancient clocks allowed vulnerable cells to time their DNA replication for the dark of night, escaping the deadly DNA-shredding UV rays of the ancient daytime sun. They literally invented the biological clock just to survive. Section 5. Time is a social phenomenon. We've traveled from atomic clocks in Paris, to cave isolations, to the womb, down to ancient blue-green algae. When you pull all these threads together, a beautiful truth emerges. A single clock works only as long as it refers to the other clocks around it. So the crucial point is, whether we are talking about the atomic clock in a national laboratory or the microscopic circadian protein clock inside a single liver cell, Time is inherently a social phenomenon. It is an act of communication. An isolated clock is useless. It is the sharing and synchronizing of rhythms that gives time its meaning and allows life and modern civilization to flourish. Which leaves us with this final, beautiful thought to ponder. We spend our lives fighting the clock on the wall, feeling like we never have enough of it. But if perfectly synchronized time requires a vast communicating committee, are you really just a single, isolated person? Or are you, right down to the DNA in your cells, an entire brilliantly orchestrated universe of time, intimately connected to the rotation of the planet and the dawn of life itself?